You're listening to the Hourz O Power. This is your host, Bloodbeard, and tonight we have in the studio with us Satyrasis. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves for us?
Hi, I'm Dave Peterman. I play guitar and do vocals.
Hey, I'm Matt Krasinski. I play guitar.
And one of you is not with us tonight.
Correct.
That would be
Our drummer lives in Massachusetts.
his name is
Oh.
Dimitri Metropolis. He also does a lot of the electronics and all kinds of other stuff. I guess we all do kind of everything.
Yeah, we all chip in a little bit.
We're a new age power trio now.
Oh, excellent, excellent. So the name actually, Satyrasis, I'm a bit curious. How'd you guys come up with that?
Do we want this? Do we want the standard story? Okay. We had a lot of bad things. Like 37 kills was a thing that was proposed at one point.
You know,
Like,
back in the high school days.
yeah,
you know,
like.
Oh.
you're trying to come up with the wackiest, craziest thing.
And I came across the word Satyrasis, which is, of course, the word for the male version of nymphomania. But I didn't like the I in the middle. It looked really weird, and I didn't really like that name, but we were kind of using it for a minute. But so our drummer at the time kind of couldn't pronounce it. He's just like, so what's our name? Satyrasis. I was like, yes, that's our name.
Yeah, and it was right because Dave and I started playing back in high school. That was the band's been around for more than 10 years, but thank you. So it was like right before Battle of the Bands. We had to get
We had to get
named.
something.
Right. So and then
Mhm.
once we had that, you kind of stuck with it.
Yeah. It's,
Yeah.
it's a good point you've mentioned there, Dave. I've probably heard your band's name pronounced.
800 different ways.
Yeah, it's Satyrasis,
Mhm.
everything, yeah.
Yeah, it's
But
yeah.
it doesn't have a
We could've
specific
been-
meaning. We hope that we've been able to create some meaning for it.
Yeah,
but
well, it was
maybe
always the
that's-
idea to have like a one-word name, but because at the time, I guess when we first started out, bands were having, it was starting to be that phase of bands having a whole sentence as a name, and we were just really, really against that. We wanted to,
Right, keep it
we
simple.
wanted
Keep
brand, we wanted brand recognition,
Yes.
Exactly.
a strong identity that we would actually never get, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean, well, sentence names, it's a bit of a trend now.
That's all good.
It's a trend I don't really respect.
I think
but
it's just because they're running out of names. Like you can't.
it's true. I mean,
Right, I mean-
one-word names, there's only so many one-words out there, right?
So we made up our own word.
Mhm.
Excellent. So, speaking of drummers, though, you guys have had a lot of drummers. I looking you up on Mel Archives, there's 12 listed, arguably more than Spinal Tap.
Well, it's fun to drive through Metro Detroit because like we can drive past, like going to and from shows in Detroit. You can be like, oh, I remember, at that exit, the Wixom exit. Remember when we, had that, what was it, Andy? And
Mhm.
then we can.
Yeah, we had. We've had just. I mean, there's probably 10 guys in Michigan that can play this type of music to the way it's supposed to be played,
Mm-hmm.
and luckily we found one of those guys. But I mean, there's a lot of weekend warriors out there that just dudes that couldn't play, and we
Right,
we wanted to be able
And
to.
I wouldn't say that's like a discredit to them. It is
Well, yeah,
challenging
yeah, yeah.
music
I mean,
and we're challenging people to get along with.
we
but
we
it
burned
takes
out
that-
more than one or
it's
two
burned out a lot of
drummers
people,
by
yeah.
just being like incredibly too serious and just like
absolutely
guys
too
would be like,
serious.
man, we just want to play. We don't want to deal with you or this. So that's kind of how it goes.
Story of
special.
Frogmouth, right?
So yeah, that's but luckily the lineup we have now is the last
Very
one
solid,
we'll ever
it's
have.
Very cohesive. We
And
we get along quite well.
yeah, and not well at the same time.
Yes.
Well, speaking of your lineup, the last time I saw you guys perform was at last year's Ogre Fest.
Mhm.
And was that the last time you have performed?
That was the last time we
Believe
were on
so,
stage.
yes, yeah.
Awesome. Well, not awesome, actually. I wish you guys had. Anyway.
Have you seen us live?
It was a good.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. You guys
It
closed
was-
with
it was fun to
Twist
play.
of Cain. It was excellent.
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah. That was
Yeah,
good. That was a good time.
it's a great set. So, with that, I notice you guys also don't have a bassist, but you used to.
Mhm.
Do you, what? Now that you don't have a bassist, do you feel like you're missing something, or do you?
Well, we still have
What's the decision?
we still have bass. It's
We
just
do have bass.
it's just not played by anybody anymore.
Yeah. I mean, in a sense, I mean, I'm not quite sure how to answer that.
I don't know if
It doesn't have that fourth member input.
I don't know if this is supposed to be a trade secret or not. We'll hear from Dimitri if it is. But the bass that you hear on the record is a computer.
It's completely synthesized.
Because technology has got to the point where musicians in another 10 years, nobody's going to play their own instruments anymore because you're not going to need to.
Sure.
Because as long as you can like manipulate the velocities and the thing, it's going to sound just as good.
And it's kind of scary, but it's exciting at the same time because then it frees you up for the creative process and not doing.
We've had reputable bass players that heard our bass tracks, so we would send them if they wanted to jam with us or whatever, and they'd be like, why didn't you just use that? It sounds just as good as what I could record. It's like, well, that's comforting.
Now, commonly, I usually see if a computer has replaced someone in the band, it's usually the drummer. So I guess you guys might be a little ahead of the curve or something with that.
Well,
it's a lot of some of the transformations in this band have been intentional, like artistically and musically. Other times it's forced upon us. And I'd say we wanted to get this album out, and it was like, well, if we want to get this done and we want it to fit into our vision of it. Oh gosh, our vision. But really, we wanted to put something out, and this was one avenue to do that. And
if we had lost a drummer, I can't say that drums would have been a lot harder to replace actually than basses. Harder and not. I mean, I know a lot of guitar players that do
especially.
that. Oh yeah. I mean, you can do it, but to us it doesn't sound as good. Plus, we have a brilliant drummer, so luckily we didn't have that problem. Finding drummers and bass players is equally hard. You can throw a penny out of the studio and hit a guitar player. You know what I mean? Quite literally, there's probably that guy standing here that was in here before.
Yeah, we just had a guitar.
And he was great.
Studio,
yeah. So you know what? They're everywhere.
Penny, yeah.
But bassists and drummers, man, just it's tough to find.
Yeah.
And if you find them, you got to hold on to them and put up with whatever they're gonna give you, and that's always fun too.
Yeah.
Excellent. Now, speaking of your sound, and what you guys are as Satyrasis, you guys have put out on online, both on your Facebook and on your own website, that you have a little bio about yourself, and it starts off with Michigan Satyrasis is an enigmatic heavy metal triumvirate with thrash metal roots and ever-expanding progressive tendencies. Now, I'm curious, you guys are listed as enigmatic. Are you at all concerned being here as part of an interview, worrying that interview may tarnish your enigmatic
It's not
status?
that, so I don't think
yes.
Maybe the way that I viewed the enigmatic, I don't know if I got that
That's
memo
more
of what it meant.
musically.
But musically, because we had to make the decision when putting out the record of like, well, are we going to say this is thrash? Are we going to say it's progressive? Are we? And unfortunately, you've got to put something on it, and we had a hard time with that. So we say, well, it's kind of enigmatic. We have our thrash roots. We're compared to bands like Deceased a lot.
We were getting a lot of Deceased.
And I'm okay with that. But
we like Deceased.
But
I think musically we have a thing that I guess the idea that we started out as a thrash band, and that's kind of where we were in our younger years. But we've the whole idea of music in itself, like being limited, even a progressive label doesn't, like one of the reviews we got was complaining like that it was in Ukrainian too, which was pretty cool. And but they really didn't like how we did a Rush cover, which is a definite prog band, but it sounded punky and thrashy, and it's like,
you guys
like
really
even when you're in like progressive music, which is supposed to be the be all end all of music experimentation, if you stray outside of those lines somehow, you get yelled at for doing that too. And we really don't even like the heavy metal term anymore either. Like we're just cravers of all kinds of music, and I would love to sound like 38 Special, or just as much as I'd want to sound like early Morbid Angel. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not that not that we're ever consciously trying to say, well, let's make this thing like Morbid Angel, let's make this thing like 38 Special. But for me, it's always just exploration, just within my own playing. Like, can I do this? Or I hear something on an album. of whatever particular
or
genre.
limitations, like
Or
can
lim-
we even
yeah,
like
yeah.
we can't even do some of the things we would love to do.
It's experimentation, not of like the genre, but really of our own limited abilities.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, in the end, even though we talk about us being very intense and going through all of these band members, I mean, we're also looking to have fun.
Right.
So the thing that sticks with us is what we go with, regardless of whether it's an acoustic interlude in a song or
Mhm.
an electronic introduction
Mhm.
or just a straight up blastorama.
Yeah, the only rules in Satyrasis are our own rules that, of the stuff that we like and don't want to put in there. And we, as the three of us, constantly try to push each other out of those comfort zones.
Absolutely.
And try to drag in things that we like that the other members may not like. But that's kind of how our music gets created.
I think that might be a good transition. What, just about the length of the album and saying what our sound is, what our influences are, because this album took 7 years to make.
Yeah.
And what we started out with as whatever intentions, those grew up as we grew up and had different life experiences. The album, it's funny when I hear myself talk about it or think about it, that I'll always approach it almost as like an outsider. I interpret the word enigmatic as this. It's because the choices we made making the album constantly changed, and even the way that I perceive the album now changes, and I can view it from different, I don't know, maybe I'm just kind of bumbling, but hopefully that makes some sense.
Right. Speaking of though the album and trying to describe it, on your own website. I don't hate to pull. I like pulling stuff from your website,
Sure,
talking
we put
about
it
you in
there
person.
so we can talk about it.
Yeah. So you have written their second full length, Of the Dead, is an opus built upon a conceptual descent through the extremity of the human condition. Each song is a door beyond which the consumptive ear may listen in on tales of ambition and addiction, money and obsession, murder and war, naked in their tones of rage, humor, and sadness. Crack the door and be pinned down in a hail of riff fire. Find yourself inexplicably submerged into a sea of atmospheric time signature bending, only to resurface into a menacing maelstrom of contrapuntal chaos. Of the Dead will be released on Seventh Door Records. So,
we didn't write that before we wrote the album.
Yeah, that was...
after recording it and sitting with it for a while, it's like, well, how do we describe this? And that's our attempt to just say, well, if you haven't heard it, what might you expect to hear?
I prefer not to write things like that personally.
Yeah. No.
Because but I mean, somebody that doesn't, it's hard in this day and age. There's so much different music screaming at you. It's hard to even get somebody to sit down and pay attention through 2 songs of the record. And how do you describe how much we care about that sort of stuff, or how we, that's probably a description of how we feel like, if we were talking to somebody like us, how we would try to get them to care about what we were doing, or try to, bring it into their head a little bit. That's, I think, the only, you could write about this album as positively if you want, or as negatively. That is the
I think
goal
the
of
one
words.
thing, well, it's difficult because there are 3 of us, and our drummer living in Massachusetts, Dave, and I live 100 miles apart. That we haven't always worked on it together in one room. We have, but not always. So there's always these little ideas developing on the side, and they come together. So that's one of the things that I think makes it interesting and exciting for me, because Dave will write lyrics, or Dave will write a riff, or Dimitri will come up with some variation on something or add some part to it, and it makes sense to them. But then, I have to internalize it and figure it out, and there's interpretation going on within constantly. And
I think the central point of what that was saying is that, we know, we know how we sound to us, but I have no idea how it sounds to you, or to the engineer, or to, John Q. Public on the street. And we were kind of describing, I guess, how we want to sound to ourselves, and hopefully that connects with somebody. But I think, it's hard to, what may strike you as a listener and get you to check out a band is totally different than it's a really hard game to play. So
Yeah, definitely. Well, how about let's stop talking about it. Let's start listening to it. You guys want to introduce this next track?
yeah, was it
It was Excision, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, Excision is the song that we all agreed kind of capture. Like, if you wanted to hear like what is Satyrasis in one, or what is this album in one song, this one kind of does it. It's got a the lyrics are about drug abuse, and the song starts out very optimistic and energetic, and it takes you to a very different place by the end. And I feel like that was like a microcosm of the entire album. It goes through many different stages and phases, just like the album itself took so long to make.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty good description.
All right. You're listening to all this right here on Impact 89 FM. And we're back. This is the Hours of Power and your host, Bloodbeard. We're in the studio right now with Satyrasis.
Hello.
Thanks again for stopping by. Now, that last track, it had a very particular intro. When I first heard it, I thought it was MIDI, but turns out
it is MIDI.
It is technically MIDI.
But it's for someone who plays guitar, that they would probably recognize. It's from a program called Guitar Pro, which is it's
what this
computer
album was
notation.
Born in.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. It was because our drummer lives in Massachusetts, and we didn't always record stuff. We would write riffs down in this computer program, and he would play it back in the Mario sounding music, and we'd send those files back and forth, and it's just kind of like a little joke amongst us of like, well, we'll start it out, but also kind of fits in with the theme of the song of a cockeyed optimism.
Yeah. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
I like it. It made for a really distinctive intro, and it really stuck out to me when I was listening through the album.
Yeah, we had originally, like, Dimitri did a beautiful, beautiful sounding fill in the studio with his drums, because it was, of course, we originally played that on guitar and the drums, but then we stuck that in there, and we kind of had to battle with ourselves, because we recorded it, and it sounded good, but it has that character.
Yeah, even if it takes a while, the best ideas got to win out, and that's definitely what happened there. So
Excellent.
We're pretty happy with it.
Now, your new album, Of the Dead, it's been 7 years since your last album,
Sure
Creation of Failure. And I've been hearing from people in the community like Brad from Genocide and Cavalcade going over, I think, maybe to your place and hearing earlier versions of things. And
it
sounds incomplete, but
we demoed this album five separate times in its entirety.
Yeah.
Some of the songs dated back because we did a full half nationwide tour back in 2009, and some of the riffs were existent around that, but like Imp of the Perverse.
Yeah, I mean the riffs in these songs, like there's riffs dating back to 2005, I think. But yeah, Imp was complete. The first song you guys played was complete. We played that on tour in 2009.
We
and
rewrote
some of the stuff
intro
obviously
and
came
stuff,
later.
but
but
it was it's it's
I think
with that.
when I mean anybody that's fairly in our inner circle has kind of heard the smatterings of it, but we've been pretty tight-lipped about it because we wanted it to be right.
Yeah,
or as right as possible when it came out.
We all have, even, for instance, Imp was around since 2009, but Dimitri just didn't have that feeling about the intro of it, and it got kind of put to the side. And he said, okay, well, we need to rewrite this intro, and we argued and fought about it and slept on it. And
for probably 5 years.
Yeah, but then we came up with something that we all agreed on, and it's like, okay, well, that's ready. And that's what we,
Yeah, the demoing process, we kind of took it. There's no reason to take as much time on a record as we did.
Well, there is, because we did it all ourselves, and it was a learning curve.
But we have, this record tried to kill this band at least every year twice. So the idea that it actually even came out is a miracle in and of itself. Because after tour, I mean, we almost broke up. and
Oh.
we got a new drummer, all that stuff, and then we promptly that drummer quit, and we kind of had a rekindling of things, and then just started went headlong into working on this,
Sure.
and we've just been at it. But there was so many times in that 7 years where we were like, we're packing it in. We're done.
Yeah.
This is we can't do it.
It's interesting because each one of us, and this might speak to the earlier question about why so many band members, is it's a growing process. Each one of us went through a particular phase of withdrawal and then just complete breakdown of just I'm over this. But then it kind of brought, rekindled, and there was always something about these riffs, about the ideas and the songs that brought us back to it. And bringing in another person, they had to start that process from the beginning, and it's almost like a Jason Newsted situation where it's like all the other guys have been there through a lot of things, and they're going through things currently.
Mhm.
This new guy just hasn't. It takes time to,
Except we never found a
acquaint
guy
them.
that could just learn all the songs.
Right, but
Yeah.
So there was that. But yeah, what was the original question? Where were we at? We were on.
Just demoing process.
just
Oh,
demoing
demoing
process,
process.
yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different factors that ideally a demo or two is what bands usually do. But it got really, because we were learning how to record everything ourselves, and Dimitri went from not knowing anything about Pro Tools in 2009 or whatever we got off tour to
be able to
wizard with that thing now. And 5 years learning anything will do that to you. But we had to learn about recording techniques and return. We also put a lot of pressure on ourselves as far as songwriting was concerned, because of the first record we cobbled together and did as best as we could, and there wasn't as good a response to it as we would have liked, and we really wanted to make sure that whatever we were putting out, we wanted to make sure it had the stamp of everybody. And that ended up being kind of a rat hole to go down too, because everybody's got to sign off on every little thing, and it just kind of, it's always something.
The bureaucracy.
Want to backtrack though a little
Certainly.
bit to Imp of the Perverse.
Mhm.
You're talking about working on the intro of it, but if I recall, it starts with a sample, doesn't it? Or
Yeah.
yeah.
So what we mean is the intro.
The intro sequence.
The intro section.
It's
So
got
the
like
first,
that. It's
three
got a
riffs.
call and response section where it's the diddly, and it goes between Dave and I, and then it does
did
the
that go again?
drums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
But
So it's like
but before then there was
Yeah.
other stuff.
there was
and-
different riffs.
Yeah.
Like kind of a bad Avenged Sevenfoldy whiny sort of riff that Dimitri hated, and I was like, I when something was written, I really didn't like to go back to it. I
grow used
used to
to
be really,
something.
really precious with things and be like,
Yeah.
I might never write another riff like that again. When
I think I wrote that riff.
No, damn well I can.
That's probably why we
Um,
scrapped it.
I don't know who wrote it, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Whatever. Doesn't matter.
So on the album, you guys chose a Rush cover to do, and I thought that'd be interesting because I've only seen you guys once, but in that time you guys had just done a cover of Twist of Cain. So I thought if you guys were going to do a cover, I figured Twist of Cain was going to be that cover. But I guess with three of you, maybe it made sense that you guys did a Rush cover. huh?
We're,
playing live, we always like to do something because we've played these songs so many times behind the. Still, we play those, but we also like to throw in things like Twist of Cain for our own, amusement.
Yeah, that was.
But the
like,
Rush
whole
cover,
Twist
I
of Cain
think
cover
I think
was-
you came up with the idea or
Yeah.
the proposal for it, and
Mhm.
that was one of the few things where we was just like, nope, agree it, no
Mhm.
problem, and I think it fits really well with us as people, but again, in the context of the album of the human condition and growth.
Well, yeah, it definitely. It was originally we were going to record it as a bonus track for a record, and it just
For our
ended up.
Japanese
It
release.
ended up. We were playing that on tour too, but it was one of those things that came together really naturally, because we all have a pretty deep love of that band anyway. But it just kind of clicked. I was actually, when I went to LCC, I was actually driving on 496 when I thought of that. I was listening to Hemispheres, and I was like, man, this is because the song was short too, and I was like, I bet we could turn the verses, because the original song's got a slower tempo. I was like, I bet we could spice this up and still keep the flavor of it, and it ended up working out pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We love Rush. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who doesn't?
Yeah, I know some people. We played that song in New Jersey, at some bar in
They
Trenton.
didn't care for it.
No, they-
What?
Oh, I don't remember
Yeah,
that.
you don't
too.
remember. I'm telling a story.
Okay.
And they loved it. And like it was weird that this is so much Rush. Like they had Rush on the jukebox, and like as we were loading out our gear, they were like playing Red Barchetta. It was like great. I was like, this is the best show ever.
I
Now
don't
we're gonna go
remember
play 3 more.
Must have been a
worse
good
shows.
show.
It was one of the better shows. But we were on there with a bunch of like porno grind bands.
Hmm.
Like I think that show we played that show with Waking the Cadaver,
Hmm.
or which is like I don't know. I think that maybe the people were just happy
Oh,
to see
yeah.
rock. Anyway, divergent.
Could be. Now,
Bad story.
you guys have included a lot of content with your online release of this.
Absolutely.
And one of which is a lyrics booklet. And beyond just the lyrics, you guys at the end decide to end it with a quote from Truman, which is, "Time will only tell. The human animal and his emotions change not much from age to age. He must change now or he faces absolute and complete destruction, and maybe the insect age or an atmosphereless planet will succeed him."
Let me specify, when you say Truman, that's actually Harry S. Truman, the president, not like Truman Capote. It's
Right.
the president. But it's when
It's from David. It's from
The David McCullough book,
but the
yeah.
David McCullough book.
it's from well, it's not David McCullough. It's actually Truman when
It's from Truman's diary.
from his diary
Mhm.
after he had retired and was reminiscing. I think it was from a speech he gave at one
Hmm.
point where he was basically kind of outlining his life in World War I and then becoming president and the decisions he had to make after that and the decisions that the next generation was facing. But when we were putting together the lyrics and kind of the album had been recorded, we were again looking for that common theme throughout of like, well, what represents this, as words or as pictures.
Because we
And-
were originally going to use that quote like as a basis for a song,
right.
like down the road, but the song kind of hasn't materialized yet or never materialized.
Right, and it seemed to tie everything together that, I mean, not that this album was necessarily written with a message, but if you look at each of the songs, they all include some sort of vice or, Excision is about drug use, War Whore is about war, Imp of the Perverse is about the story Imp of the Perverse by
Just
Edgar Allan
murder,
Poe,
yeah.
which is about murder
Mhm.
and
Murder and getting away with it,
And
but eventually having to like
guilt.
turn on yourself. Yeah,
But those things, and it seemed like all of those tied together with that quote of, this is kind of how we are as human beings, and the end results of these we can foresee now. Can we do something about that or not? And it seemed like a nice little bow to put on the album for me.
it's like not knowing how. I think Harry Truman's an interesting figure historically for many reasons, but he was definitely kind of a backwoods sort of guy. Like he wasn't, in Washington,
Stubborn as a Missouri mule.
he wasn't like erudite, and he wasn't, like Ivy League educated or anything like that. But then he ended up being dropped and like making like he ended up being the only person to ever drop nuclear weapons on somebody. And it's
then
interesting
having-
that like our kind of a running theme within our band or our music is kind of the everyman's take on extreme situations, and I guess that can be, I guess that's one of the things that I find most interesting. So that's what I write about it, and having seeing how all these different things in the different songs kind of affect. The Foreman's Face is about an auto worker who they found out was a Nazi and worked in a concentration camp, and that's we
Then
actually
he-
did an
then he-
interview with a.
I don't know if emigrated is the right word, but he ended
Did I
up
say-
coming
No, I
to the
didn't say
United States.
immigrated. I just said
No,
he
no,
worked-
I'm putting that word out there that
Yeah,
the song was about this man who worked in a death camp and avoided
But he
detection
also-
and ended up working as
Yeah, he
you know,
also worked at a Ford factory in Ohio, and it's
Right.
the idea
Jeez.
that
this idea of duality.
that people can be he could to anybody that knew him here in this country, he was just just a neighbor down the street, just he was the foreman in the shop, and I think that's an interesting idea that he was also
The same
also could have been a
dedication
Nazi.
that
Yeah,
he
exactly.
put towards being an accessory to murder was also put into his job as a foreman.
Yeah,
and
making
those
diesel
same
engines.
passions can be put into applied in similar ways to very different ends.
But yeah, I think to bring it back to the
quote.
Truman quote, rather not directly, but you know, he was just theoretically a regular guy that ended up being in the presidency and doing all these weird things. And I think what he was talking about in that quote is that, you know, nobody can really know how the future is going to unfold. And even, I mean, the record, I think it's kind of has that same feel as not, we have no choice to be cynical because all we can see is the dark things, and that's what he was talking about with the you know, the insect age and that sort of thing. But you know, and we have, you know, we're talking about all the ills of humanity as well. But there's, just because we don't know doesn't mean that there's not brighter days ahead, or there's not you know.
Yeah, there's always that bigger vision with the album, but but when we were working with it, it wasn't necessarily, because we were always really up close to it, working on literally, like, do we have 1/8 note here or 2/8 notes here, and you know, just insane things like that. And you certainly develop a cynicism towards what you're working on and each other when you've got those kinds of things going in. So I think that quote just tied things together in the broader spectrum of what the lyrical content in the album is, but also our personal experiences in working on it.
Because I want to be, you know, I wanted, you know, as far as lyrically goes, trying to not talk above anybody, and trying to write stuff that people can, you know, situations that they can put themselves in, or, you know, can, you know, somehow relate to in some way, shape, or form. Because that's how I relate to music. So, you know, if I see something that I can relate to, then I'm pretty into it. I think most people are like that though. So it's definitely cool.
Excellent. Backtracking a little bit, once again to Imp of the Perverse, you mentioned it's a Poe tale.
Yes.
Which relates excellently to your guys' artwork. You guys chose Harry Clark's The Premature Burial for your album cover for Of the Dead, and that was part of a collection of illustrations for Poe's tales of mystery and imagination. And I'm wondering, why did you guys select this for your album cover?
Well, first, let's do a quick little description of it.
Yeah,
that are those wood carvings or
No, they were. He did. So I was flipping through Rumor magazine one time, and for anybody that doesn't know, it's like a horror magazine, a Canadian horror magazine that doesn't cost anything, whatever. And the idea that wow.
So you were going through the magazine and
I was
you
going
saw
through the magazine.
some
And
artwork.
I saw they had a thing on you know, horror in popular culture, and Harry Clark was a stained glass artist from Ireland. And there was a couple pictures that he did from that Edgar Allan Poe book, and I was like, okay, these are kind of cool. And so I went to the ye old internets and, you know, found some different stuff, and we ended up coming across
trove
that,
of things.
coming
that he
across
did.
that picture, and I was like, that would be an amazing cover for a record. And you know, we didn't think we could get the rights to it or anything like that. But you know, so we were originally trying to get somebody to draw something in that vein, because it's really of the time period, kind of 1920s-ish. It really
right.
looks,
I think
looks
that
how
he created those in like 1933. So it's got that.
Yeah, it feels.
Or maybe that
its
was when he
age.
passed away, but
I think
it's
that's when he
from
died.
that era.
Yeah.
Certainly. Very.
But yeah, and then we found out
detail.
that, you know, it was from that long ago, so it was
good for us to use.
exactly.
Yeah.
Very
and,
useful.
and why try and get someone else to do it? And we've got the thing right there.
Yeah, I don't remember who suggested that to us, but it was. a good
It's
suggestion.
another one of those things that kind of fell into place. Fortunately, I don't think there was much discussion. It's like,
Yeah.
yep, that's it. And when you get that, it's a good idea to go with it.
It was an excellent choice. You also you throw in a lot of things with the album as well, and it's a lot can get through the one
It's
download.
like a whole.
You guys did a stock photo shoot of sorts. We made a Satyrasis stock.
Oh yeah, like
Yeah,
our
business
kind of our
casual.
when we did the release, we wanted to make sure we had everything available, because it's a digital release as of right now. So it's got, you know, the WAV files, the FLAC files, the MP3s. It's got the lyrics booklet. with all the artwork and credits and so forth. And um, but
It's important to put that stuff in there.
yeah, it's
But
important to get that.
tablature.
unfortunately, in this day and
tablature
age,
as
you
well.
cannot, if somebody asks to do an interview in a magazine, you can't just tell them, I gotta. You can have one of our live pictures. It just looks so
Right. So we
rough.
we put all of these things together in a press pack, and
Mhm.
so that if someone wanted to write about us,
Mhm.
and also to make everything professional, because
Yeah.
there's no we felt it unwise to put all of this work into it and then just not cross the finish line, so to speak.
So yeah, I think it kind of came to fruition. Like, Dimitri and I were trying to think of like, the squarest possible place to take photos, and then you came up with the stock photo idea. So we went to Matt's work and dressed in our
Yeah,
work best and
dressed in our work clothes, and we're in the cubicles, and in a sense, I like the idea of the stock, because we don't have high aims of ambition. We are not looking to change the world. We're guys looking to push our own limits, but to have fun doing it. And it's just like we're stock guys, and in a sense, we've looked at this stuff so much, it's kind of stock stuff to us. And it's like, well, we have to have a band photo. Well, here's your stock photo.
yeah, we're definitely poking fun at the idea of band photos.
That being a requirement.
Though they're like the idea of just getting your band together and taking pictures together is like one of the deadest ideas on the planet.
Yeah, it's
Like, if you just Google band picture, and it's just like there's so much fail that
and
you'll
everyone
find.
talks about wanting to be about the music, but you've
Yeah.
always got that inevitability of
Mhm.
well, you have to market your music
Mhm.
in the end, and
Mhm.
this was our way to make it tolerable for
But we're
us.
also like, I think we're at a point like, when the last time we were surfaced and promoting any music, the last time we were on the show or out, we all had long hair.
we had a different image, yeah,
And we were still just metal kids, when we started doing this record. I was
Gosh.
23 and I'm
yeah.
30 now.
Now we're
So,
all gonna have
it's-
I'll have my master's next month. Dimitri will have his. You're gonna have yours next year. I mean,
Yeah.
we're no longer. I mean, we're the same people, but it had to progress beyond the live photo of windmill hair.
But
Yeah.
like the idea of the Dead is kind of like, becoming like part of the nameless society, and the the stock photos kind of, if you want to read super far into it, kind of, like the anonymity of just being dudes in cubicles is like, if I went back and talked to my 23-year-old self and be like, you're gonna take photos with these guys in a cubicle in a button-up shirt, which you didn't even own a tie until 2010. He would have probably punched me. But I realized that kid was the pose, and this is kind of the not. And I think that's an interesting idea. And a lot of metal guys don't want to face facts. Oh yeah,
I think
we're just real people that like metal, and we don't have to live the uniform and wear a old denim vest with
the general
gear on it.
idea of it ties in with the idea of the Dead, which is the title of the album, that we're all going to become dead, but
Mhm.
while we're alive, we're products of the dead,
Mhm.
and it's got that anonymity. It made me think of that that Louis C.K. bit where he's like, think about it. There's way more dead people than living, and you're going to be dead way longer than you're alive.
Yeah.
You
So
know?
Just in case you weren't bummed out
Yeah.
out there, Radioland. We're all gonna be dead soon, and Matt just told you.
Sooner
Yeah.
or later, right?
Heard it here.
Now,
Ugh.
you guys released a lot of content. You've made a lot of content available out there, and
Correct.
you're talking about
Yeah.
FLAC files, WAV files.
Yeah, we've even got like
everything.
the full transcriptions, because we had talked about Guitar Pro earlier. If someone plays, because we had to, I wrote a riff and Dave needed to learn it, and instead of me sitting there for however long,
Mhm.
I write it out. So we just compiled all of
We're
that.
we're a thorough bunch of people. Me, the least bit thorough, but I'm
thorough
still
in
pretty,
your own ways.
I'm thorough enough, but
I mean,
the
you wrote
idea of
lyrics,
just
I'd say
like,
they're pretty thorough.
there would be tablature for them even if we didn't. But the idea that I
Mhm.
think in today's media landscape, especially there's, how many metal bands are there now? 18 million. You got to try to get out there, like give everybody every opportunity that they want. If somebody's interested in cutting up your music and playing it, doing a remix as a joke, you want to give them that material. If somebody's only interested in the instrumental and not interested in hearing my voice, you want to give them that.
It's kind of putting I can't think of the expression, but it's putting not money where our mouth is or what, but we feel the most important thing to us has always been about the music, and that's what's allowed us to transcend our disagreements within the band. So we wanted to extend that to everyone else. It's like Dimitri and I are really big fans of tablature, and we'll
I'm a fan of tablature too as a genre, I guess, but
right.
not as a like. Yeah,
but anyway, we want to make sure that if someone would be interested in the tablature, well, we've got to give that to them. And
people were,
and
that's cool.
But that's why we put out the album under the Creative Commons license, which you see often in like software, like Wikipedia, something creative that other people are going to change. So if someone wanted to use our music, like Dave said, to make a remix, they just have to say that it was ours. They can't use it for commercial purposes, and they have to. It's under a share-alike license, meaning they have to.
Or if somebody likes a drum beat and wants to turn it, wants to turn it into something, or really likes the guitar tone and wants to go in there and copy. Like we're releasing WAV files of the entire recording, so you can get in there, and if you like how a synthesizer sounds and you want to go see
to
what
be
that
more
sounds
specific,
like in space, you can do that.
Not just WAV, but like the multi-tracks. So if you wanted to pretend you're a studio producer and say, well, I'd like to mix this. All right, what would this sound like if I dropped the guitars out? It would give you that ability, in addition to an instrumental version that we have and the full one with lyrics. So, because I'm a big classical fan, and you read classical scores and you find that
It's true. He has a Brahms tattoo.
Yeah. I'm not going to tell you where, but the
I know where.
Of course you do. We went on tour together. But you find lots of little jokes. We all became big Frank Zappa fans during this process, and you find that there are lots of different ways to approach the music, whether just plain listening to it, but if you find that it's written down, you'll find little jokes in there, and
to do something to cut up the boredom of
right. You send files and tracks back and forth for months and years, and you do little things to make each other. We had an elephant thing in there for a while.
Oh my God! Don't remind me of that. That's like
we took that one out.
Yeah, Dimitri has a thing where he would like to. He likes to. He's a big fan of like the whole concept of let's throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks. So one time we got a mix. And there's riffs.
Yeah, he didn't tell us this.
He didn't tell us about it.
He's like,
at
here's
all.
the latest mix.
But
it sounds great.
Elephant noises over the riffs, and I call him. I'm like, dude.
It's like during a transition.
Going in.
And
I was like, dude,
And you didn't keep it?
No, he didn't keep it. Of course
no,
not.
Dave didn't want it. It might still be in the mix, like subconsciously.
This is not Animaniacs. This is a heavy metal record. And be that as it may, if he wanted to make sounds of the animal kingdom by himself, he can do that. I don't care what he does.
Hey,
but
it's 2015. We have Hate Beak. We have Caninus.
Yeah.
Animals are all
if you
over
wanted
metal
to,
now.
If you wanted to do a Hate Beak, that's fine with me. Just don't put it over my riff. Write your own riff and put the beak on it.
Okay.
Yeah. I tend to get territorial about stuff like that.
But anyway, there are lots of different ways to approach this stuff, and we wanted to make sure that if someone wanted to, go through, because we went through this process, we learned this stuff.
If somebody wanted to turn us into Hate Beak, they could do that.
Yeah,
with a parrot and our multi.
But it's pretty cool. I mean, you could with like dang it, what's that the video game where you play the
Guitar Hero?
Yeah, Guitar Hero. You can release the master tracks. You can hear, Bohemian Rhapsody and isolate all the voices. And it's like, well, we've got that stuff. What are we going to use it?
You could do that in Guitar Pro or Guitar Hero. But what do you saw? Yeah.
No, those. Never mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
All right. Well, How about we hear that Rush cover that we were talking about earlier?
That sounds
Yeah.
like a good idea.
All right. You're listening to Circumstances, covered by Satyrasis, right here on Impact 89 FM. You're listening to the Hours of Power right here on WDBM East Lansing Impact 89 FM. So we're here in the studio with Satyrasis tonight.
Hey,
Hey.
welcome back.
And so far, we just got some questions from people in the audience. First, we have from Kale of Cavalcade wondering, how many more presidents until your next album comes out?
How many presidents have we? It was 7 years to put out this
2.
one. It started with
Bush and Obama.
Bush and Obama.
But
So
they wouldn't take it. They wouldn't take new president. Hillary Clinton won't be elected until, or inaugurated until 2017. So no more, Kale. No more presidents.
Mm.
Because after this, we
isn't that the title of the next album? No More Presidents.
it should be. It should be Grover Cleveland's surprise. The life and times of Benjamin Harrison.
With
no,
the Van Buren boys.
Interesting factoid about our record. It was originally even longer than it is. It was
wow.
originally
It's exactly an hour right now.
yeah. It's so
59
it was
minutes,
originally
59
it
seconds.
originally had an instrumental song on it that ballooned and is turning into a
Quite the freak out.
yeah. It's the instrumental is yeah. So now it's turning into it turned into an EP because it got too long to even we had to like either focus on the record or that one song.
Yeah, it's
So that
Jazz
the entire
Odyssey.
thing is based on Lucio Fulci's The Beyond, and it's called Beyond the Seventh Door.
Yep.
And that should be an EP.
it's
And
an old
so
Italian horror
Yep.
film.
it's anybody that watches geeky horror movies like that will be
Yeah, it's a good one.
be quite familiar with it. But yeah, so it's kind of based on that, but it's a 25-minute prog rock sort of thing. A lot of
Excellent.
metal. There's homework at every show that we have to play.
Yeah, I've proved many a math theorem
There's a
during,
lot of
during your
pictures of
set.
And but that's kind of we play the interesting thing about creating this record from a live standpoint is that we got to do a lot of it at max, just playing whatever we felt like, because we got to the point, we used to be a band that cared about our live show and what people were going to think of us after, what kind of set do we, all that stuff that doesn't matter. But somehow through this album we eventually, I think it was a show when we opened for Witch Mountain, or maybe that Friday the 13th show that we did a couple years ago. But we it ended up coalescing into like, if we do play live now, it's 100% for us, which sounds really obscenely selfish to people that are really
But
into
we
the
found
show.
that if we do it that way, the
People
people watching
tend
are
to
going
like
to have
it
more
more.
fun because we're having more fun.
Yeah.
And we throw in things like Twist of Cain or, but I think when we did Twist of Cain, you played the drums and I played bass and Dimitri did guitar.
Yeah.
And
But
we
we're
have
always
fun.
like, I mean, we've
in most
always
of our shows,
done-
we know all the people there, so they come up and
One year we did Misfits song and we
Oh,
did
yeah, we
Testament
did.
song. Remember when Kyle sang?
Oh
that
yeah, that's
Testament
right.
song?
When Kyle came in,
We've done a
Yeah.
lot of different covers and stuff. So
But,
I mean,
we'll play live again, but it's not a priority for us because I'm finishing up my masters. Dimitri's finishing up his master. We're
All finishing
we're,
up masters.
we're all finishing up masters, and then
moreover,
theoretically we'll
like,
get jobs.
like we've done it, and there's nothing. I mean, some people really live for that stuff, and I don't want to take anything away from people who really like to play live. It is a release. It's something that even like I haven't done it in a while, and you start.
It is
to
a
get-
release. It is
You
fun.
start to get the
but-
itch for it a little bit, but at the same time, like it's a real drag playing live, and people that just end up paying $5 at the door don't see how much of your life has to go into just doing that. It can be a real drag. You know what I mean? It's not just like, hey, just walking in the drums. Somebody set up the drums. No, you got to set up all the drums, and you got to bring the amps, and you got to pay for gas, and you got to get some food, and you got to get babysitters and all that stuff. I got to get babysitter.
Yeah, he never loaded gear during tour.
That's not true.
Yeah, you did it once.
Yeah,
So we could say that.
I only booked all the shows.
No,
Sorry.
no, it's
Sorry, I didn't load that cab that one time.
yeah,
Thanks, Matt, for besmirching my gear loading ability on
yeah,
air. I'm
libel.
crying out.
Yes,
I think
slander.
we've
I think we've
I
reached
think
the
we're
end.
wasting your time
Yes.
at this point.
Well, so in summary, what we have to expect from you guys in the future, instrumental EP of sorts.
Right, absolutely, yeah.
During the Clinton administration, maybe. And
Hopefully before.
hopefully before.
yeah.
Hopefully
Hopefully
the
before.
lame duck session of the Obama administration. I'm making the call now.
The Lame Duck EP.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well-
So that could be expected, and
That's...
the techno remix.
And techno
Oh yeah,
remixes
the
galore.
remix. We didn't
Yeah,
talk about
actually,
remix.
we
What?
do have a few riffs that got trained.
We actually have like a sanctioned remix that's like in the works.
really.
Mike Parks from
Oh,
from
I
Home
did.
Alone is,
That's news to me. I didn't know that.
yeah.
But I remember Dimitri made a dance version of one of our songs. So
So yeah, we're hoping to release that at some point too. So yeah, we're
Hit the
gonna
club
do
scene.
stuff more than every 7 years now until we break up, which could be soon. Could be right after that.
Who
who
knows?
knows? Whatever.
It's all in the future, man.
It's all of the dead.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for joining us. You guys want to introduce the last track?
Well, before
yeah.
that, I'd like to say thanks for
Oh,
having us on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And thanks,
It's my
everyone,
pleasure.
Yeah.
anyone that listened.
And
What's the last track we're
that
playing
would
here?
be a foot in each grave.
Foot in Each Grave.
And you're listening to all this right here on Impact 89 FM.